Let's take a few moments to get situated, providing your seat a solid foundation within which to straighten the spine, relax the shoulders, rest your hands on your knees, extend the neck nice and long, relax your jaw, close the eyes or keep them slightly open, gazing at the earth in front of you. And take a few moments to notice the in-breath and the out-breath. Feel free to grab whatever you need to sit comfortably or lie comfortably. And as we take this sacred pause, this U-turn, this reflection, we can ask ourselves the question, what is burning inside of me? What is alighting inside of me? What is shining, burning, passionate inside of me? And rather than search for any particular answer, see if you can allow an answer to naturally arise from within yourself. Once again, what is burning inside of me? In the Bhagavad Gita, it is written, we all have our Shva Dharma, our unique path, our unique purpose, our duty to this world. And it is up to us and only us to discover this path and walk it. Taking note of whatever answers arose or didn't arise for you and honoring exactly what happened. Recognizing everything is as it is supposed to be. And to close out this meditation, taking a few more nourishing breaths. And gently returning to your physical space. So, hello, welcome, namaste, good evening, everybody. Thank you to those of you joining me in the room, those of you joining me on Zoom, and those of you listening to the recording afterward. This is a little Dharma talk that I like to call Living from the Heart, all about this 18-inch spiritual journey, which can sometimes take many lifetimes, simply to travel from the head to the heart. I like to begin with a poem of my own as a lead-in to this week's topic, finish with another short meditation, and have some time at the end for question and answer. And the title of today's talk is Let the Burning Flame of Love Set Your Life on Fire, Part 2. So last week was Part 1. And if you weren't there, don't worry. We'll begin with a small review. Because we are here to discuss, to think about, to inquire the role of the fire element, the role of tapas in our life. And this week's poem is called May Your Vision Become Clear. May these words be the flashlight that illuminates your inner voice of love. May these sentences become granite, alive and rising to meet the will behind your naked eyes. May you fold them like chocolate chips into the batter of your heart to find sweetness in everything. May they become the wind that lifts your chin up and sharpens your beautiful gaze. May you be blessed so that you too can bless. May the fires of passion fuel your journey onward and upward. May your relative journey become absolute. May joy upwell inside you. May good fortune reign upon you. May sickness never disturb you. May Mother Earth support you. May Father Sky inspire you. May you realize your hidden perfection. May you release all desire to change. May beautiful wash over your smile. May your prayers be answered. May you be happy, healthy, and accepting of all that you seem as you realize all that you are. May the Buddha enlighten you. May Jesus save you. May Mohammed bless you. May the sun always shine on you. May disease turn to ease, illness to wellness, hatred to kindness, ignorance to wisdom, chaos to harmony, depression to joy, and anxiety to contentment. May you touch and be touched. May you love, love, and love. May you help others. May these blessings reign over you. May any love waiting to arise, arise. May all love that has risen increase more and more. So today's topic is a deepening of our understanding of the Sanskrit word tapas. As a writer and as a poet, I love words. I think words can be quite powerful. And by deepening our understanding of individual words, we can deepen our understanding of our role in this world and the universe. And in our spiritual practice, we have all sorts of different sacred texts and scriptures to call upon to guide us along our path. And it's important to recognize that many of these sacred texts have been translated and retranslated and reinterpreted again and again throughout time. So often, even slight tweaks in a certain word will bring out an entirely new meaning behind the verse. For example, I was recently reading in one of Andrew Harvey's books that we have this phrase, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth." And Dr. Harvey was saying there's many ways to translate this word meek, one of which is humble. So blessed are the humble, for they shall inherit the earth. And I like that slight tweak, and it's not something you might hear from many powerful leaders in this world, that actually to be humble is to be blessed. So too, we have this term tapas, which can mean fire, motivation, discipline, burning. And last week, we primarily talked about it as a way to gain knowledge, as a way to become disciples, that we do need to have a certain level of mental, emotional discipline in our practice in order to gain a certain knowledge and wisdom about ourselves. And today we'll talk about some other ways to interpret this magical word. Because we also have this idea that our tapas, the same burning, also means motivation. We might have a burning desire. And it's not too different from the way an athlete might get fired up before a game. We have this huge energy that is motivating us to do a certain thing or perform a certain task in our life. So there is a quote by St. John of the Cross. "You have no light to guide you except the one burning in your heart." You have no light to guide you except the one burning in your heart. So even in this Dharma talk, Dharma has many meanings. It can simply mean teaching, but it can also mean purpose. And one of the lessons of the Gita is that we all have our own purpose. We all have our own path. And it is up to us to both uncover and discover this path, and then, of course, walk it. Now, another interpretation of what it means when we say that tapas is fire, or tapas is burning, is that this process of fire or burning is one of purification. It is, in fact, a purification process. And tapas is a crucial part of the yogic path. So we might also say that yoga itself is a purification process. And what exactly we are purifying is going to mean different things depending on what perspective you are taking. So, for example, in many of the ancient texts, we are all said to be ignorant. We are all said to have avidya. We don't know. And we are essentially in this darkness of unknowing, in the darkness of ignorance. So light in this case is a metaphor for knowledge, for awakening, for burning away the darkness of ignorance to discover a new insight into ourselves. And one of the most fundamental lessons we find is that one of our biggest symptoms of our ignorance is that we believe ourselves to be our body and mind. We identify with our body and mind. So in yoga philosophy, awakening and knowledge and what we call wise discrimination or viveka are all the same. We awaken when we discover we are not the body or mind, when we discover an essence to our being that goes beyond material reality. You might call it soul, spirit, Purusha, Atman. The point is, in our ignorance, we identify with our body and mind. And as a result, that causes a lot of suffering. This is known as the Jnana path, the path of knowledge. This is actually called Jnana tapas, the tapas of knowledge that burns away the darkness of ignorance. This is the path of avidya to vidya, of ignorance or not knowing to knowledge or knowing, or simply knowing if we are to drop the K at the beginning of the word. So one way that we are purifying ourselves is purifying ourselves of ignorance. But there are still other things that we can consider on this path of purification, of what exactly we are burning away. If our mind, body, and spirit is like a metal, metal, and we put it into the fire to burn off the impurities, you might begin to ask, well, what exactly are the impurities that we are burning off? And if we get into yogic psychology, we find that we are burning off our karmic conditioning. We even say you have to burn away your karma. In order to attain liberation, your task is not to simply accumulate all the good karma that you have, that you can do in this lifetime, but to actually burn away all of your karma, both good and bad, so that you can become free and liberated from the wheel of conditioned existence. So the way that karma tends to work in yogic psychology is just as sound can be recorded into a tape recorder. We have this action in the universe that leaves certain imprints in whatever it is that you are recording. So too, our actions in this life leave imprints in the mind. And we call those imprints samskaras. And we have this mental conditioning, these mental imprints, which will guide how we think and feel in this moment. So our task is actually to burn away these samskaras. And it's not dissimilar to when you are driving very fast in a car and you suddenly slam on the brakes. In the process of the friction of the brakes against the momentum of the car, the brakes themselves will generate a lot of heat. So too, as we begin to slow down the body, mind, and our general habitual way of doing things, this will also generate a certain level of heat, a certain level of tapas. So one of the first things that we do on retreat is slow down. This is why walking meditation and eating meditation are such powerful practices and challenging practices for many people, because the act of slowing down will burn away the impurities and the karmic conditioning that is always telling us to keep going and to move on from one thing to the next and the next and the next. We are conditioned in this society to always be rushing from one thing to the next and the next. So simply sitting down and noticing your breath as it flows in and out, and not checking your email, and not turning on the television, and not distracting yourself by going to the refrigerator, this will burn away your karma. This will burn away the latent impressions of the mind that always and continuously tell you to keep seeking and keep going after certain things in your life. So, mindful eating is a wonderful way to practice tasting each morsel of food. We take whatever food it is we are eating into our mouth, chew it 30 times, swallow, and pause. And this will burn away the samskaras that we have of always needing to scarf down the food that we have. So we are conditioned both through our actions that we perform, but also through our society and also through our culture. And we always find ourselves not happy with where we're at. We're always on our way somewhere, always seeking more. So we have to burn away these impurities by intentionally seeking less, doing less, and slowing down and being with our body and being with our breath. Now, you don't necessarily have to buy into the cosmology of karma and reincarnation, but an important inquiry on the spiritual path is first deciding or inquiring whether there is anything that goes beyond death, whether there is any part of your inner experience that does survive the death of the body and the mind. So, if, for example, you think that there is a heaven in this afterlife, you have to really ask yourself, well, what exactly or who exactly will I be when I enter into this heaven? Maybe you are really looking forward to seeing your grandfather. All right. Well, what of your grandfather is going to be there and what of you is going to be there? When your grandfather was alive, you were just a baby. Are you going to be a baby when you enter into heaven? Is your grandfather going to be 60 or 70 years old? So when we think about if there is any essence to our experience that goes beyond birth and death, we have to realize that this body and this mind is changing all the time. So, what is it that survives? And this is a very common inquiry, particularly in Buddhism, because it is very challenging to juxtapose this idea of non-self and anatman, that you don't actually exist, with this idea of rebirth. Because if you don't actually exist, what exactly is being reborn? And in general, yoga takes a very particular approach. It basically says that your latent impressions of the mind, or your mental state, or your subtle body, is another way of thinking about it, is what continues on. In other words, all the mental patterns and conditionings that you're cultivating in this life is what propels you into the next life. So when Chogyam Trungpa was asked what essence of ourselves does get reborn, he said, well, I don't want to give you the bad news, but unfortunately, it's all of your bad habits. And fortunately, it's your good habits too. But the point is, it's both your good and both your bad habits. So that is another reason why we are cultivating certain mental states in our practice, because these are the mental states that we carry with us. And even yesterday, I was hanging out with the Hare Krishnas at the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, and there was a professor there giving a talk on the Gita. And he made the fairly bold statement that all religions in the world have a singular focus, which is purification of the heart. And I do like this unifying theme that our task here is to purify the heart of hatred, ill will, egotism, vengeance, jealousy, and envy, and cultivate the qualities of love, kindness, compassion, forgiveness. And you might find that this is the fundamental tenet amongst all religions in the world, that we are here to purify the heart and cultivate an undying and eternal love that is inside of us. So, what's important to recognize when we think about burning away these impurities and the discipline of tapas is that it won't be easy. So, another definition of tapas that you will find is austerities, or to put it a different way, our ability to tolerate difficulties and sufferings. So, fasting, for example, is an extraordinary practice of tapas where we intentionally do not eat food for a certain period of time. And that's when all the desires and all the attachments for sensual pleasure in the form of food will begin to come up. And during that time of hunger and stomach pain, there will be a lot of suffering. And your ability to stick with it is going to propel you along the spiritual path. So, even in yoga, ever since the beginning of the path, our an ability to tolerate sufferings has been key. So even when Alexander the Great visited ancient India 2,000 years ago, he came across these very strange individuals in the middle of the afternoon, bare naked, standing on one leg in what many people today would interpret to be tree pose, with their arms above their head, looking up and bathing in the hot Punjabi sun. This is one of the earliest yoga practices that we have record of, standing on one leg for long periods of time in heat itself. And this is a story of tapas, and we have feats throughout history of human beings undergoing intense physical austerities, whether it's hot or cold, whether it's hunger or thirst, whether it's sitting in a cave and meditating for very long periods of time. Our path is going to require a lot of discipline and a lot of tapas. So there's a very similar story of a professor at a university, and he had gotten his PhD in yogic studies, and he wanted to go learn from the yogis out in the forest. So he went down into the forest where he found all the forest dwellers and the sannyasins on their spiritual path, and he found a large group of yogis lying on rocks, gazing up at the sun, again on a very hot day. And he went up to them and he says, "Can you teach me the truth of yoga?" And these men, who were lying naked on the rocks, replied back, "Yes, of course we can. But first, take off your clothes and lie on these rocks." And as with many stories, there's different ways to interpret the meaning. A crucial part of this story, and this is anytime you hear any story about any professor entering into spiritual circles, is that we are seeking an experience. We are not here to talk too much about the explained world, but we are here to experience a reality that goes beyond words. Now, laying naked in the sun is also a form of tapas and physical austerities. But there's also an extraordinary symbolism here in that there is a reason we are standing in front of the sun, because the sun is its own form of tapas. So even when we think about fire, you can also think about sitting next to the fire. And what happens when you do that? It warms you. So, as warm blooded creatures, there is this other idea in the Vedas and some of the other sacred scriptures that life is perpetuated by tapas, by warmth. In fact, all of the life on this planet is perpetuated by the warmth of the sun. And before the development of warm bloodedness in the evolutionary tree, that was the only way for any organism to maintain a consistent temperature is by working with the sun in a particular way. And an interesting evolutionary advantage happened when warm bloodedness did evolve with our mammalian ancestors about 200 million years ago. Is suddenly we were able to regulate our own internal body temperature, but we weren't able to do it alone. And this is a very important lesson of love and passion and warmth, is that our warm bloodedness is literally passed down. Our love is literally passed down in the form of warmth and affection. So anyone who raises chickens or sees chickens knows this, that the mother hen needs to sit on the eggs in order to keep them warm. And this also happens in the human species, is that young, newly born infants absolutely need to be held by another warm body. So, an interesting pop quiz that I like to offer people is to first ask yourself, what grows plants? And a lot of people know the answer. Well, obviously, plants need light and nutrients in the earth and water. And then I ask, what grows human beings? And to a certain extent, we understand that food and water is also beneficial to the growth of human beings. But psychologists have discovered this phenomenon known as failure to thrive. If a child does not receive love, affection, and warmth from another human being, it will develop this condition known as failure to thrive. Until a young infant is held and given eye contact and warmth and physical affection from another human being, it's not going to thrive. So, love, absolutely, from birth until death, grows human beings just as much as fertilizer and water grows plants. So, we all need nurturing, and the sun is that form of warmth and nurturing. So even when we salute the sun in our yoga classes, when we do our Surya Namaskars and bow before the sun, this is one of the earliest deities we have across almost all religions. Before devas and devatas became abstract concepts, they were always deeply connected to this natural world. We had Mother Earth, Father Sky, and of course, the Surya, the sun god. And whether or not it's an actual deity, we can, of course, recognize that no life on this planet would exist without the sun. So that's the good news, that we thrive on love, that as warm blooded creatures, that warm bloodedness and our physiological functioning is quite literally passed down. The bad news is that stress and suffering also help us grow. That in order to get stronger in this mind and body, we have to apply some external stress on our system. I often wish we were plants and we could just root ourselves into the earth and sit in the sun and then have a beautiful and pleasurable growing process. But unfortunately, human beings don't work that way. In order to increase the length of a muscle, you have to stretch it. In order to increase the strength of a muscle, you have to work it. So once we recognize this, it creates an extraordinary transformation on the path. First, we can welcome in difficulties in our life as opportunities for growth. So Hazrat Inayat Khan put it this way: I asked for strength, and God gave me difficulties to make me strong. I asked for wisdom, and God gave me problems to learn to solve. I asked for prosperity, and God gave me a brain and brawn to work. I asked for courage, and God gave me dangers to overcome. I asked for love, and God gave me people to help. I asked for favors, and God gave me opportunities. I received nothing I wanted. I received everything that I needed. So, this is another understanding of tapas that we can take. It means difficulties and suffering, and a recognition that these difficulties and sufferings are the fertilizer for our own growth, without which we simply wouldn't grow at all. But Mother Teresa also says, I know God will not give me anything I can't handle. I just wish that He didn't trust me so much. So we have to apply a certain stress on the system in order to grow. That is why we are slowing down the process of our life by slowing down the breath, by eating slowly and walking mindfully. And there will be some internal friction and internal challenges that will arise, and we can welcome those in. Can't tell you how many times I've heard from one of my students that they are a bad meditator because they think that meditation means just sitting down, straightening the spine, and experiencing nothing but peace, love, and bliss. When actually, usually, the opposite is what happens. We meet many difficulties and challenges in our attempts to find peace and calm in this moment. We meet all of our samskaras, all of our karmic conditioning in this life, and you could even say from all your previous lives. Because we live in a society that thrives on dissatisfaction. We live in a society that tells you happiness is going to be this, happiness is going to be that. You're going to need to do this, watch this show, buy this product, do this thing. In this consumerist culture, we're consistently fed ideas that happiness is to be attained from something outside of you rather than the inside. So, in burning away the impurities of that karmic conditioning is going to be challenges. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. So, St. John of the Cross put it this way: people then should live with great patience and constancy in all the tribulations and trials God places on them, whether they be exterior or interior, spiritual or bodily, great or small, and they should accept them all as from God's hand as a good remedy and not flee from them, for they bring health. The combat of trials, distress, and temptations deadens the evil and imperfect habits of the soul and purifies and strengthens it. People should hold in esteem the interior and exterior trials God sends them, realizing that there are few who merit to be brought to perfection through suffering and to undergo trials for the sake of so high a state. So it's important to recognize in our culture, we're told that happiness is to be found through fulfillment of your desires. Those desires tend to be sensual pleasures. And in a thought experiment, I encourage you to take that to its full extent. Imagine you have all the money in the world, all the power in the world. You go on a beautiful vacation where every single need of yours is instantly attended to from the chefs, from your servers, from all the people around you. Anything that you could think of that you desire, it suddenly comes to you. How long before your brain turns to mush? Without any challenges, any risk, any friction, how long before your body and mind simply wither away? Even astronauts who go into space for long periods of time and don't experience the stress and force of gravity will come back to the earth with extraordinarily less bone density and muscle strength. We need the forces of suffering, trials, and tribulations in our life to keep us strong. So, our spiritual path is also going to involve the tapas, the burning of the challenges, stresses, and suffering in our daily life that we are transforming. So we can combine this idea that tapas grows us, that pain and suffering grows us, also with our warm-bloodedness and warmth and love. And we find this again and again through many of the more mystical texts that love itself is a purification. Catherine of Genoa, in her treatise on purgatory, for example, writes, "The love of God does to the soul what fire does to material things. The longer it remains in this divine furnace, the purer it becomes. This fire, ever making it more pure, ends by annihilating in it all imperfection and all stain, leaving it wholly purified in God." So many of the mystics describe love and the love of the divine as this purifying fire. In fact, St. John of the Cross, in his very aptly titled Living Flame of Love, he describes divine love as a fire that purifies the soul. And he even uses the metaphor of a damp log that gets tossed onto the fire. As you know, if you take a damp log, it's going to have moss and water and even some bugs in it, and you toss it onto the fire, and what's going to happen? It's going to cackle, it's going to smoke as all those impurities begin to burn away. And once they do burn away, then the log burns cleanly. burns brightly. So, as we welcome tapas into our life, you might say that our task is to set ourselves on fire. And a quote I often see from Rumi in people's Instagram posts and so many other statuses is that we must set our souls on fire and seek those who fan our flames. And it's such rich imagery. And I think we all deeply understand, probably without the mind, but from another layer of understanding, what it really means to set our souls on fire and seek those who fan our flames. So I've talked before about how even this idea of nirvana, we tend to translate it as heaven, which takes a very Judeo-Christian approach to this state. But nirvana actually means extinguish. The same way that you would extinguish a flame, we are extinguishing our suffering. It's a way of blowing out, because if you were to blow out the candle, that's where we find the end of suffering. So there's different ways to interpret what it means to extinguish the suffering in our life. And one of which is that just as when the log burns, it will burn and burn and burn until there is nothing left but ash. So another way to interpret nirvana is we are burning away everything until there's absolutely nothing left but a calm, peaceful, and open clarity of our true nature. So we're here to burn it all the way, not just what we might refer to as impurities, but even letting ourselves burn away. So when you read the line from Matthew, if you cling to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for me, you will find it. We find this idea again and again on so many spiritual and mystical paths that we are here to burn away the false self, the little s self, the egoic self, who you think you are. We must let go of. So that's another fundamental lesson we have from the Bhagavad Gita, that we are here to give up all our egoic desires. We spend 99.9% of our day trying to fulfill our own needs, our own wants. And we are here to release it all, to stop seeking for our own happiness and to act with total non-attachment to our actions. So you might think, if I were to give up all desire to fulfill my own needs and wants, combine that with a non-attachment to the results of my actions, and then I act, what will that action be? And the only possible conclusion one could make is that it's action to alleviate the suffering of others. So once we burn away our egoic, selfish, narcissistic desires, only caring about ourselves, and we act with non attachment to the results of our actions, of course, we become activists. We seek to alleviate the suffering of others. So we are here to fully and completely transform ourselves. There's a story of a middle-aged man who goes into a car accident and he reaches the gates of heaven and he says, "No, I'm not ready yet. Please, God, just give me one more chance. I'll come back to earth and I'll do so much good. I'll completely transform myself." So God says, "Okay, I'll give you one more chance." And when this man returns to earth, he goes to transforming himself. He practices yoga. He gains strength and flexibility and loses 100 pounds in the process. He shaves his head to release all attachment to earthly desires. He starts working for the benefit of others. And then one day he's crossing the street and he gets hit by a bus again. And he goes to God. He says, God, what gives? And he goes, oh, wow. To be honest, Tim, I didn't even recognize you. Sorry about that. This is the essence of transformation. We are here to burn away what doesn't last to discover what is always there, what is our true essence. So Andrew Harvey, already quoted earlier, says, the kingdom is now, is here, in the inmost heart core of reality itself, the fire of love and justice blazing at the heart of all things and beings. An extraordinary, demanding transformation is needed to create the fully Christed self. Everything has to be devoted, given, and surrendered to the fire of the Sacred Heart. So we toss everything into the fire. Some say this is the essence of bhakti, of love and devotion. We just give it all up. Richard Feynman, one of my favorite yoga teachers, says, a yogi is one who trusts in the truth of pure love, one who drops into all experience as it arises, trusting the essence of the heart, which enables the yogi to offer all experience, particularly the core experience of the mind, into the fire of awareness. It is this fire of awareness that is the true guru. So we must recognize fire also means transformation. Even what we call burning is simply transformation. As we know, and as physics tells us, nothing disappears. All matter and energy is conserved. So the carbon, the oxygen, the hydrogen that forms the log, it's still there. It's just transformed into smoke rising towards the heavens, into warmth and light that emanates out in all directions, and even water. Beautiful water is a byproduct of any combustion process. So that same water returns to us. And we are here to welcome it all in, to offer all our experience into that fire. You might say it's the fire of divine love or the fire of the Sacred Heart. We burn away all concepts, nirvana, the extinction of all conceptual thinking, to rest in the beauty and the love of the Sacred Heart. It's all right here. The kingdom of God is here. The pure land of the Buddha is here. Our hearts are here, simply waiting for us to finally burn away all that is armoring them, all that covers them, and rest in the divinity and light of the Sacred Heart. So with that, let's do one final check-in. Straightening the spine, relaxing the shoulders, closing the eyes or keeping them slightly open, checking in once again. What is a light inside of you? What is burning inside of you? What is true, lasting, and permanent inside of you? What goes beyond the body, sense, and mind? And what past patternings, conditionings no longer serve that we must offer into the fire? What armor around the heart? What rigid conceptualizations, beliefs, and opinions in the mind need to soften and melt away? As St. John of the Cross says, you have no light to guide you except the one burning in your heart. Let this light inside be a guiding light. Let us all live from the heart, and let the heart illuminate the path, the Dharma that we are meant to walk. And I thank you for sharing your practice and presence with me today. Namaste.